Okay, so now that we have an understanding of how the API works, we looked at the manifest workflow and the storage workflow, we can actually talk about the applications that we saw at the beginning of the course. We had the storage app, which had the drag and drop functionality, and we had the manifest app, which had the DMS integration. So we'll look at the source code for both these applications, and we'll start out by introducing the repos. So I have both the repos open here side by side. I wanted to show you what's common between them, and there are links to these in the description, but they both come with pretty detailed readmes that walk you through exactly how you need to set up the repos, what's the environment configuration, and how you can get your app started. Now both these applications had a front end that we saw in the demos, so the front end code looks very similar in terms of structure. So let's go over the different folders here before we do a deeper dive. So they both have an auth folder which has basic OAuth code, nothing special going on here. The only special class here is Synchronization auth wrapper, which goes into the refresh token functionality that we talked about in the last chapter, and we're going to do a deeper dive for this file. Then there is the components folder, which has all the UI components involved in both the applications. Then we have hooks. Now these hooks carry the bulk of the functionality when it comes to interacting with the API. This is where the rubber hits the road, and this is exactly what we're going to talk about in the detailed walkthrough for both these applications. We're not going to go into too much detail on the UI side because that's just a generic TypeScript and React, but it's important that you have an understanding of how the API works and how we get the file identification information in both cases. Then we have services, which are helper files. The one that I want to look at here is the connector logic. Now what this is a mapping of all the file extensions, for example, .dgn, .revit, and the connector type. And we're getting these connector types from the supported formats page that we saw in the previous chapter. So this is just an association of all the file extensions with the connector identifiers. And then we just have some type definitions, and of course the app.tsx, which is going to be the entry point for our app. So in the app.tsx, let's look at briefly what's going on, how we actually enter into the UI code. So it starts out with a sign-in, a basic sign-in, and once we have a login for a particular user, then we make sure that we have the refresh token for that user. This is where the synchronization auth wrapper comes in. And once we have both the refresh token and a regular token, we can actually render the UI, which is sync view and synchronization page in the respective apps. And this is where we actually get into the functionality that we saw, the drag and drop and the DMS table. So to start out, let's talk about the synchronization auth wrapper. What exactly happens in this refresh token? What's the logic behind this functionality? So let's do that in the next video.